going to be presenting on lifestyle modifications to maintain your brain. And Professor Shea, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and start your presentation.
All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry we had a little computer glitch. It reminds me of the COVID times when I had to lecture several times a day from Zoom. That was exhausting, and making sure that this part of the computer didn't clash with that one was the hardest part. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little different than what you might have heard, in that I'm going to steer clear of drugs and pharmacological interventions, which are important, are being worked on, but nothing has come along yet that will mitigate our cognitive decline with aging, and especially with conditions such as Alzheimer's disease. And what I will focus on instead is this little tan paragraph of things we can do now to maintain our cognitive performance as sharp as possible. And it involves lifestyle changes. What I mean by that is nutrition, mental exercise, and social activity. I've been here at UMass for 31 years. Don't ask me how that happened, but it did. And I'm still at it. And this is some of the research that I've done in collaboration with people that were in the nutrition department, with a lot of grad students, people from the nursing department, and a few individuals from UMass Worcester. Okay. So what will I talk about today? How our brain learns in the first place, why we experience a decline in brain function with age, why some of us will face Alzheimer's disease, and how do we know if it's Alzheimer's disease? These slides will be shared with you, and there are some that describe there are some descriptors that I'm not going to read to you, but you'll have them available to have a look at later on. And what we can do about these problems. And yes, we can fight back. Now, you don't have to tell me this anymore. Everything about us gets slower as we age, everything. And that also includes our brain and our apparent brain power. Remembering things becomes more and more difficult. And should we face clinical cognitive decline, it becomes even more difficult. And Alzheimer's disease, you've heard of. Mild cognitive impairment is kind of an in-between issue, where your brain isn't working as fast as we anticipated to do so for your particular age. But you're still functional, you can still work your job, you can still do your social activities, and some of the behavioral problems that manifest during Alzheimer's disease aren't present. Now, there are prescription drugs that can help, but here's the rub. In order to qualify for a prescription drug, you have to have lost enough cognitive power for a physician to recognize it. Now, you'd really, in an ideal world, if there's a script drug that's going to help me, I want it now. I don't want to wait till I'm declining, right? But unfortunately, the prescription drugs don't help you ahead of time. In fact, they can be bad for you. So if we're considering prescription drugs, we unfortunately have to wait until some decline has happened, which is a really sad situation. Ideally, we want to take action before decline. So here's a little close-up. Here's a brain. Here's a little close-up of the thinking cells in your brain. They're called neurons. And this gets harder and harder to explain to young people every year. There's an extension coming out of each neuron like the wire from a telephone. Of course, I'm talking about a landline phone. And this brain cell sends information to the next brain cell, and they all work together. We seem to have gone backwards. The brain cells, the neurons don't actually grab onto each other, but rather they come very close. And there's a thing we call a synapse. And we release chemicals that transmit a signal, hence neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters cross that little synapse and they reach the second brain cell and give it information. So the neurons are working in a chain. like one telephone to the next, to the next, to the next. And as they all work together, we transmit thoughts, we recall memories, we form new memories. And unfortunately, we lose neurons as we age, even under healthy conditions. So I can make a little chart here of neurons under a few conditions. If you're old, like myself, you have a bunch of neurons that are old, but they're still healthy, they're still working, they're still doing their thing. You also have a population that is damaged and tired. If we treat them a little better, we may rescue their function, get them a little back to full tilt boogie. But we also have a population that it's for which it's too late to bring them back online. They're going to pass away within a year. This makes treatment a real problem because I am going to continue to decline for a while, even with a functional treatment, as these neurons down here pass away. So that confounds effective treatments. You know, my cholesterol's high. I go to the doctor. Doctor says cholesterol's high. I say, what do I do? He says, take this pill. Well, within a month, my cholesterol is down. Okay. If I take something that's going to help my neurons, I may not see a rebound. I may still see a little decline for a while. Does that make sense? That makes it rough. And this loss happens normally, but it also speeds up in Alzheimer's disease. Why is this even happening? Because we live too long. We wear out, right? When we were new as creatures on the earth, we only lived 25 to 30 years. Our brain cells didn't plan on having to hang on 3 or 4 times that lifetime. See that? And we never replaced them. So that's like the part of a car that you never replace, it just slowly wears out. You're kind of born with all the brain cells you're going to get, and they simply decline over time. If you cut your skin, it repairs. If you injure your liver, it will repair. That same situation isn't happening for our brain. Yes, we do get a little bit of neuronal rebirth, but not the amount we would want to keep our brains acting young. And I'm going to lean into this. This is a little bit frightening. Alzheimer's disease doubles for every 10 years of life as we age. So 10% of the people age 65 years or older have clinically diagnosable Alzheimer's disease. Not maybe, they have it. If we go 10 more years, it's 20% of people. By age 85, it's 40% of people. Oh my. By age 95, it's 80% of us. So this is like exponential versus linear. Am I making sense? 10, 20, 40, 80. Anybody on the call? When we hit 105, how many of us will have dementia on average?
Oh,
Everybody. It's out there for all of us. It is in our future if we don't pass away from something else. So the concept of passing away of natural causes and such, what happens now since our life is extended, it's typically cancer, Alzheimer's, or a heart attack. You know, those are the kinds of things that take us away. And I bet some of you know you have that uncle who's 120 years old and he's sharp as a tack. I submit that that uncle will experience their Alzheimer's disease at 140 years of age. But a lot of us have shuffled off the planet by then, huh? So, and a lot of us have shuffled off the planet by 95 years of age. And the point I'm trying to make is we're all at risk. There's supposed to be 80 people signed up. You can do these percentages, and it gets to the point where you're not thinking, oh, it's them. You're in the mix as well, which is pretty scary. But if we could delay the onset by just 10 years, we'd be looking at 40% of people 95 years of age or more. We'd push that out so that many of us would not experience it in our lifetime. Where does the critical loss of brain cells happen? It happens in a special place our central switchboard called the hippocampus. Big word. The hippocampus, if I drove a needle through my head, God, that's really awful, and through here and in here in the middle, way in the center, I find a special region. And this is the region where we take in information and consolidate new memories. And then we deposit those memories up here in another area. Your hippocampus helps you form memories, and it helps you go back to your filing cabinet brain and retrieve them. Okay? And your hippocampal neurons are always learning while you're listening to me or while you're texting, is what I usually say to my students in class. Do me this. Think of your favorite memory just for a minute. Close your eyes if you like. This is dangerous because some of you won't come back. You'll be off thinking of the memory for an hour. Your hippocampus, if you manage to think of your favorite memory in life, your hippocampus brings it back from where you stored it. My computer's bouncing around on its own. My favorite memory was the concerts that Mayor Kevin White gave us back in the 1980s, the Sunset Series on the Common. There was a night the Allman Brothers played, and it was a beautiful night, and it was a free concert, and there was wine and people smiling and laughing and dancing. And what am I remembering? The temperature, the sun going down, the music, the taste of the wine. All those things are coming together to reform a memory. So your hippocampus accesses all the parts of your brain to pull it back together. And as it is failing, you become unable to pull back memories or to consolidate them. We form our memories in several types of them in several stages. We have sensory memory, which occurs 1 second after you've seen something. And this is what comes up if you're hypnotized or questioned in court. You can be, if you quiet down with hypnosis, you can remember something that happened that you only saw for a second, and you don't even have awareness that you remembered it. You can glance at an object and remember it. So it's not cognitive, it's an automatic function. We also then have something a little more profound. It's called short-term memory. And this is our working memory. And this memory takes several seconds to a minute to form without rehearsal. Rehearsal means looking at something again and again. And its capacity is also very limited. We can only remember 4 or 5 things at a time. We can increase that by what we call chunking. If you're a musician, you don't see 4 or 5 notes, rather you see clusters of notes, and you know what they are as a group. So you can get 4 or 5 clusters in things you're very familiar with. But if I try to remember 6 or 7 or 8, I lose the beginning ones. Somebody, are you still there? I see you. You still running and sharing screens. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna say some numbers, and I'd like you to repeat them for me. Okay? You ready? You have to say yes, you're ready, or no, you're not.
Yes.
You're nodding. Okay, great. Ready? So please repeat these numbers. 6625591.
625991.
5559966.
55966.
Good. 2325993.
2325993.
All right, excellent. What was the first series of numbers?
Something with 5 in it.
Yeah, something with a 5 in it. But see, I didn't do this to embarrass you, but you all see what happened. She remembered the numbers because she repeated them to me. But as more and more numbers came, she erased the first set to make room. That's how we get through the day. Otherwise, we'd be completely clogged with information. That is short-term memory, functional memory as we move around. If you repeat the numbers and use them again and again and again, something called long-term memory is established. And that is the information leaving our hippocampus and going back here and being written down on the hard disk of the computer where we can retrieve it later on. See that? That's a fascinating thing about our brain, that we have stages. But the dropout is now shifting from hippocampus active and going to the file cabinet, forming a memory or retrieving a prior one. Calls for a lot of interaction of neurons. And if our neurotransmitters are failing, we can't do that. Let me just jump ahead. Here's a little example of how we send information around in our brain. This is my head turned to the side, and this is an image of brain activity. And you kind of know how this works. The ones that are lit up are the ones that are active. So if I am reading words, this portion of my brain is really active. If I'm hearing words, a different portion is active. Whoops. If I'm thinking about words, yet a different portion. And if I'm speaking words, yet a different portion. And this is just words. We have to move that information all around. So we need our whole collection of brain cells to function, to keep going and recall and repeat things. Let me move ahead a little bit. This is the area of our brain that keeps those long-term memories and processes information. The hippocampus is down here. And look how large that portion of our brain is compared to monkeys or compared to a cat. Let me stay with this for just a minute. Have you heard of the so-called lizard brain? People say that sometimes, the lizard brain. That's the area down here, our brain stem coming up from the spinal cord. This area of our brain controls our heart, controls our breathing, controls our digestion, and just does the functions that go on in the background. One step high, and that's the lizard brain, okay? One step higher, if you will, is the limbic system, our feelings, our emotions. Down here is just, oh, I want to eat that. I want that food. I want it now. This one tells us, oh, yeah, I remember. I love that kind of food. Puts emotion on the deal. This evolved with mice. Lizards don't have that. And up here is our higher thought processes and memories, the so-called neocortex, which means the newer part. I apologize. My computer is flipping back slides on its own. I'm not doing that to you. So our basic functions, the reptilian or lizard brain, is simple survival. I'm going to do a fight or flight reaction, or I'm going to eat that food because it doesn't even have emotion involved. So a man shows up at the door with the pizza. You think, oh boy, I love pizza. I want that pizza. I'm going to eat every slice of the pizza. And your limbic system says, yeah, I love my pizza. And the neocortex says, now, Tom, eat one piece and stop. You can't eat the whole pizza. So up here is logic and stuff. Down here is instinct. And we actually have to bring our new interpretation of the world through our instinct to our emotions, and only then can we write it down as a memory. It's a very awkward system. You would think, can't we just bring it right in here? Nope, we have to go through our emotional centers first. So, and that hippocampus in the center is a place rich for losing brain cells. Why do we lose them? Our entire body is subjected to oxidative stress as we go through life. Our brain cells, again, are not replaced. Cut your skin and you patch it up, but we can't do that with our neurons, our brain cells. So they face decades and decades of oxidative stress. And you may be saying, why don't you tell me what oxidative stress is? You already know what it is. You just don't know that you know. I love saying that. Oxidative stress is rust. Not so much like a rusty nail or the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, but rust in a metabolic sense. Here's an apple. If I take a bite of an apple and I put it down on the counter and I leave it for 20 minutes, what happens? It turns brown. It's burning. It's oxidizing. Oxidizing because oxygen fans the fire. Why wasn't it burning beforehand? Because it was protected by the skin. Inside us, our proteins, including those in our brain, rust over time unless we consume enough antioxidants, vitamins, antioxidants that quench the oxidation. They prevent the fire from burning it. Hmm? And in Alzheimer's disease, we have things that pile up as a result of that continued burning. There's two things we can look at. Senile plaques, you might have heard of those, and they're composed of a little protein fragment that accumulates to abnormal levels. Here's a little cartoon of a normal brain, and the clear area in between the cells starts to get clogged up with little protein fragments. They make plaques, amyloid plaques. And I'm so sorry, this is bouncing. We also form tangles, which are protein assemblies that are supposed to be out in the axon, holding that thing extended, but instead they accumulate in the bodies of neurons, clogging up the ability to do neurotransmission and survival. Well, those tangles are also a normal protein, which is accumulated to abnormal levels. What in the world does that mean? Normal proteins, but there's too much of them. So there's an imbalance going on. Think of an old rusty sink with a leaky faucet and a plugged drain. It can clog up just because water is dripping. A normal event, but we want it either not to drip or to go right down the drain. How can that happen in our brains? Well, think of a kitchen. If you don't clean up after yourself, the waste piles up, or if you bring in too many new groceries without putting them away, things pile up. So there's a problem with what we call housekeeping events. The things that your brain cells have to do just to keep themselves healthy. We didn't even get to them thinking yet, just to be alive and persist and last through your lifetime. And we have problems with that housekeeping. And if I get all scientific behind it, let's have a look at some of the things that get imbalanced. There's a cycle that happens in all of our cells, but our brain cells are critically dependent on this cycle because they have to last our entire lifetime. Two of our antioxidant type vitamins, folate and B12, they're both B vitamins. If we take those in, they're going to help us take a bad boy protein, homocysteine, and convert it to methionine, which we then convert to S-adenosylmethionine, which is very important for us to build neurotransmitters and keep them going, to protect our DNA as we age, and to help us build our own internal antioxidants. So those functions will decline without adequate folate and B12, allowing us to pile up S-adenosylmethionine. When we use S-adenosylmethionine, however, we form a transient compound, S-adenosylhomocysteine, which is then converted once again to homocysteine, which is not good for us. We try to get rid of it, but it's hard to get rid of. And we want to shuttle it back and help use it to build antioxidants, but that becomes a problem. So we've got to have a continued influx of folate and B12 and other vitamins, keep this cycle going and keep our cells happy. I'll return to this cycle in a little bit, but watch the danger of inadequate vitamin intake. Here's a neuron in a culture dish. It's a mouse neuron, and its cell body is up here, and here's that wire I was talking about. And the wire is filled up with that protein that will make tangles if I don't treat it right. That protein's name is tau, so I may want to say that again, okay? I want to keep tau in the axon, keep it out of the cell body. If I take away folate for just 2 hours, look how much of that tau clogs up here. Just 2 hours. So consider yourself not taking your multivitamins for 20 years. This kind of thing will be happening in you. Nutrition does make a difference. just taking away one nutrient. And I'm going to do this a little bigger. We have genes, forms of which place us at risk for heart disease, for diabetes, for cancer, for Alzheimer's disease. We know about these genes. We're trying to learn how to mitigate the consequences of having a weak form of those genes that places you at risk. And these conditions do indeed run in families. There's a mouthful of a protein, apolipoprotein E. If you have a weak form of that protein, you are more at risk for Alzheimer's disease than the person next to you. Okay? What's the job of ApoE for short? To clean up waste products as the cell membrane gets tired and damaged by oxidation. And if it can clean it up, it'll stop oxidative damage progressing. But those of us with a weak form, we're more at risk because we can't clean up the damage so easily. That's the E4 form. I'm trying to move my mouse down here. That allele is weaker than the others. Okay? There's an E2 form, an E3 form, and an E4 form. If we have the E4 form, we are more at risk. Okay, so what we did was we took some mice and we genetically engineered them to not have any ApoE at all. Let me get my mouse up here. Or to have their own ApoE. And then we kept them on a complete diet with all their vitamins, or we put them on a deficient diet without their vitamins. Okay, so now I've got 4 conditions, don't I? I have normal happy mice with a complete diet, normal happy mice with a deficient diet. I'm sorry, computer's doing it. Mice with no ApoE and a complete diet, and mice with no ApoE and a deficient diet. And now I'm going to measure, I'm going to put them on those diets for 1 month, which is like a year or 2 for us because of the span that mice live. Mice live 2 or 3 years. Then I'm going to measure the oxidative damage going on in their brains. Well, there is always some oxidative damage, but we fix it up. The problem is letting it accumulate too much by not having vitamins and such. Now, have a look. Here's the amount of oxidative products in the brain of a normal mouse on a complete diet. It's 15. Just think of that as a unit. Normal mice on a deficient diet, they got a little nubbin up. But if you know about this is an error bar. There's no significant change. This means it's okay to be missing your vitamins if your genes are great. But let's look at the mice that don't have the cleanup protein, ApoE. Well, on a complete diet, they're still okay. There's no significant change. But the genetic deficiency and a lack of vitamins resulted in a huge increase in oxidative problems. This means 2 things are going on. There's a genetic factor and a nutritional factor. Whoa. And I showed this to a nutritionist and I said, well, each problem alone is okay. And the nutritionist said, oh no, you're missing the point. And I said, what do you mean? He said, these data tell you that nutrition can be more powerful than genetics. Because even if you have that genetic risk, as long as you're getting a full diet, you keep that risk at bay. Wow. We kind of know that can be the case for diabetes. As long as we're getting good nutrition, not a whole lot of sugar, and we're on that treadmill, we know that this can be the case for some of the genetic coronary problems. Lay off the fatty foods, get on that treadmill, you can push the risk down. Well, it's also true for cognitive problems. So good nutrition can delay or reduce the risk, even if you have genes that place you at risk. And this underscores that the manifestation of Alzheimer's disease is a combination of things, a genetic risk and a nutritional deficiency. We can't change our genes, but we sure can change what we put in our mouth. We can change our nutrition. So, and there's a little more good news that we don't lose all our brain cells at once, like a heart attack. We lose them slowly. Remember, I showed you those three? Here are the guys in the middle. We can't restore the ones that we've lost, but we can stop further loss by taking action. Or, like I said earlier, delay that further loss. So there's some disappointing studies in the news. I love this cartoon. She doesn't remember which is the bottle to take to preserve her memory. But you'll see things in the news. Well, I read that folate supplementation doesn't help, or B12 doesn't, or vitamin E. No one nutrient. I'm talking about a cluster of nutrients or a multivitamin. Can't just take vitamin E, think it's going to do everything for you. Vitamins and things tend to work together. So we came up with a combinatorial nutraceutical formulation that consists of 6 components, and they work together like a team of horses. The first group are 3 vitamins: folic acid, B12, and vitamin E. They are antioxidants, but we can't make them, we have to consume them. Next is N-acetylcysteine, a building block that helps us make some of our own antioxidants. Next is acetylcarnitine, which provides energy for all of our cells. But you know what? While you're sitting here listening, your brain is using 40% of your total energy. Wow. This sponge uses a lot of energy. When you're running or moving or stuff, yes, your whole body gets going. But this guy takes a whopping amount of our resting energy. And finally, S-adenosylmethionine, which we saw in that little circular chart, is going to keep our neurotransmitters high. All of these have been used in separate clinical studies. It's the combination that works. And there's a PDF, I believe, in the chart that consists of our 8 published clinical studies working with people in the Andover Senior Center, in various clinics, in various senior centers, that show that indeed this formulation improved or maintained cognitive performance. Here's that cycle I was showing you that brain cells desperately need. Okay, that formulation has some folate and B12 in it, so let's get more of that going. It also has some SAMe in it, so we're not only going to make more SAMe, but we're going to give you more SAMe, and we're going to increase all of these functions. We've got some N-acetylcysteine, which will grab homocysteine and help turn it into glutathione. And we have vitamin E that's going to protect our cell membranes, and acetylcarnitine that gives you energy to do all these functions. And all of these agents work together. Now, this formulation was on the market, marketed by you, indirectly by UMass. It was licensed to a company. That company is not working anymore, but you can go put this formulation together all by yourself. A good multivitamin. Ask the pharmacist for the best multivitamin for your gender and your age group. I'm an XY type and I'm in my 70s. So I'm going to take a different multivitamin than someone who's in their 40s. Different concentrations of the good stuff, but there we are. So a good multivitamin gives you those 3. And this is so annoying. I'm so sorry. All of these 3 are available online or down at a vitamin store. Walgreens has most of them, and get good ones from Nature Made or GNC, Puritan's Pride, and so on. Don't try to find the cheapest one. You can get some of them for $10, but they're not going to be very bioavailable. So the formulation is available. Now, why am I talking about a supplementary pill? Why don't we just eat right? I submit for your consideration that we cannot eat right anymore, even if we try, even if we buy our food from Whole Paycheck, Whole Foods. Once food is harvested, it's losing antioxidant and nutritional power over and over and over. Who are our closest cousins in the world? Chimps and gorillas. And they share 90-something% of DNA and our metabolism. And they wander through the forest, pulling stuff out of the ground, eating it all day. That's what we should be doing if we want optimal nutrition, and we can't do that. We have to get something off the shelf in the grocery store, bring it home, it sits home a little bit, and it declines. So I submit for your consideration that we need vitamin supplementation anyway. Eat your best, do the best you can, but you still need supplements to make sure you got all you needed. Now, if you take a multivitamin and you go to the restroom and your urine comes out brightly colored and all, that means some of the vitamins went through your system and you didn't use them. Is that a waste? I submit no, it's not. It means you got every last molecule you needed that day. If your urine's coming out all pale, you didn't have enough. So even if you get a little extra multivitamin by taking the recommended dose, congratulate yourself. You got all you needed. You are not deficient. And that's what's going to keep you strong and keep your mind strong into old age. It's like changing the oil in your car. It doesn't help your car drive better, but it will help your car last longer. See? Okay. And we are facing a perfect storm for age-related cognitive decline. We live longer, we lose brain cells as we live longer, and our nutrition declines as we age. So we got three factors coming at us. So this is a little summary of what is in the clinical studies you can go read. We have over 45 publications, 8 separate clinical trials, 350 participants. It was effective for individuals with diagnosed Alzheimer's disease, with diagnosed mild cognitive impairment, and those with no cognitive difficulties, and their spouses and partners agreed. Ask my wife if I have cognitive decline yet. And we had no adverse events for any of these people. Nobody lost their appetite. Nobody couldn't sleep. Nobody threw up. No one had the kind of reactions we have with many medicines. I'm on a acid reflux medicine because I get GERD, acid reflux. Well, I had to try a bunch of them before there were no side effects. We never saw an adverse event. Okay. So you actually have the data for our clinical studies. You can read this perhaps at your leisure. But here's the basic thing. Adults with no memory problems, they improved by 26% in a complex task. They improved over 100% in simple memory, remembering the list of words. If you heard the president, the former president, I'm sorry, talk about he had that cognitive test and they told him words to remember, this is the kind of thing we're talking about. You get a list of words, can you repeat them back to me? Like those numbers. Then I distract you and I say, oh, you know, that list of words, do you remember it? Well, the people that took our formulation had 100% improvement. People with age-related cognitive decline, the same stuff, a 25% improvement in completing a complex task, 75% improvement in mood or behavior. You may or may not be aware, as Alzheimer's disease sets in, behavioral problems arise. The individual starts to wander. They become bitter and angry with family members. They get confused. It becomes very difficult to keep the family structure together. Here's a graph from our clinical studies, and in a minute I'll jump way ahead. We're going to split you all on the call into 2 groups. Half of you are going to get the formulation, half of you are going to get a placebo. And I'm not telling you which. Well, a whole bunch of people, 93 participants from the Andover Senior Center participated, and they improved on a task of connecting dots. The dots consisted of alphabet and letters, and they had to connect them as follows: 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, 6F, 7H, and see, I'm running out. And can you do that correctly, and how fast? Well, they improved, statistically within 3 months. And the people on the placebo, I'm sorry, I don't know why that's bouncing back, did not improve. But we then said to the placebo people, thank you very much. Now here, you have the formulation too, and we let them know it. They then consumed the formulation for 3 months. They caught right up to where the people with the treatment did. We took the formulation away from everybody. They declined, but no worse than they started out. So they didn't become dependent upon it. Gave the formulation back and they improved yet again. Amazing. Let me jump ahead of some of the things because I know time is short. The best improvement for people receiving our nutraceutical formulation, abbreviated NF, was early, but it was still effective during Alzheimer's disease and for all stages thereof. Hmm? How do you know if it's Alzheimer's disease? Everybody forgets things as we age. Did you forget your keys? Did you forget something at the store? You know, you go to the store to get something, you get 5 other things, don't get the thing you went for. Did you forget to brush your teeth? Those are memory issues, but they are not indices of Alzheimer's disease. Forgetting your keys, we all do it. Did you find your keys in the freezer? That's something very different than simple forgetting. Forgetting something at the store is not Alzheimer's disease, but if you step out of Market Basket or Hannaford's and you don't know how to find your way home, that's an indication of a serious problem. Did you forget to brush your teeth? Everyone does that once in a while. But no, that's not. Are you holding the toothbrush and you don't know what to do with it? Those levels are the times you consider for yourself or a spouse that we may be dealing with something serious and it's time to talk to a clinician. Huh? There's a whole list that I put in that I'm not going to read through, but you can look at them and they are from the Alzheimer's Association and they'll help you out. Now, I talked about the formulation we made, which we made right here at UMass. All the people in the nursing department and said, is that all that you need? Absolutely not. You need a diet rich in fish, green veggies, fruits, and nuts. This is the so-called Mediterranean diet. It doesn't mean you can't have a big steak. I have one a week. Looking forward to it. You know, every Sunday night I have this big, fat, juicy, red Delmonico looking, wow. But don't do that every night. Get some fish, green veggies into your diet, and so on. That's the Mediterranean diet as opposed to the Western diet. Someone asked me once in a meeting, he said, you just told me the food should be as fresh as possible. How am I going to get it from Europe and keep it fresh? No, this is the name of the diet. Okay. There are other supplements that can help, but supplements in isolation, you may not see a difference. What I want you to do, if you listen to nothing else I said, you go down to the pharmacist and get a good multivitamin, get the best one you can and take it every day for the rest of your life. You will not overdose if you take a multivitamin at the designated amount. Swallow the whole bottle in one day, yes, that's an overdose. But even if you're eating well, adding a multivitamin is not going to put you into overdose and concerns. Okay? So yes, indeed, enjoy your red meat, but not all the time. Is the formulation right for you? Well, there are others, and talk to, if you're on a medication, talk to your physician, bring one of the slides. There are other good products out there. Some of them are termed medical foods. You don't get them by prescription, but a doctor's advice would bring them in, okay? Cerefolin, which is a form of B12 and folic acid with N-acetylcysteine, the same stuff I was talking about. Suvinate is another one. What's good for you? What's bad? What's unclear? People, table sugar is so bad for you. Soda is so bad. It's got 60 something grams of simple sugars in it. Try to get yourself, if you love your soda, try to get yourself on seltzer, which still has all the bubbles, but it doesn't have the sugar in it. Okay? Sugar within fruit is okay. It's the simple sugar that's crunched into a soda or table sugar going into your coffee. If you get real good coffee, you can do it without sugar. Try some of the more expensive stuff. Red wine in moderation is actually good for you because it's loaded with antioxidants that are derived from grapes, just like that apple I was showing you. Fish is really good. If you're not a fan of fish, get some omega-3, which is one of the components from fish. Get an omega-3 pill. Ask the pharmacist. Green veggies, fruits, and nuts are great. Coconut oil was a fad recently. It's not bad for you. But is it better for you than other kinds of cooking oil? It's not clear. There's no data to support it. So having said that, avoid the new fad that you hear about, huh? Did you know your stomach tells your brain that you're full, but it takes 10 full minutes for that signal to get to your brain? So try me this if you're concerned about overeating and keeping your diet balanced. Eat a normal human portion, then stop. Get up from the table, walk around for a couple of minutes. Then when you go back, you may realize, hey, I'm kind of full. I don't need that extra giant plate full of lasagna, which now I got myself thinking about lasagna. That was perfect. Please remember, a supplement is only one part of a healthy approach. They do not replace a drug. I had a person ask me, well, if Sammy's gonna S-adenosylmethionine, if that's going to help boost my neurotransmitter, I can stop taking my Aricept. No, 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 no. Talk to your doctor. Never go around the doctor. If you feel you have to go around the doctor, it's time for another doctor. You should be able to communicate openly, huh? You still need a good balanced diet. You still need to exercise your brain. Nutrition supplements, a healthy lifestyle are not a cure. They're an approach. There is no cure yet. Mental stimulation is really important. Stay curious and involved. Do a crossword puzzle. I do Sudoku every day. I play hangman. Not so much for the hangman, but I want to see if I can solve the word. So those kinds of things help. Go to lectures, go to plays. It's good that you're on the call listening and thinking. Go to the lifetime learning things. Take a course at your adult education center. Somebody came to one of my presentations sitting in the front, just watching television all the time, and his spouse elbowed him. See? So, well, you know, if you're going to watch television, if you're going to watch sports, be the coach. Think of what the next play should be. Keep yourself involved and mentally active. Then it's okay. Certain computer games that like concentration that make you remember where something is, those are good for you. Unfortunately, Pac-Man is not, and I love it. Learning a new language is good. Games that make you think is the way to go, huh? And try to remain socially active. Get out, go dancing, go listen to music, play some music, okay? Stay active in a workplace or join a volunteer group. All of these things are going to keep your brain strong. They're like getting on a treadmill for your brain, okay? Stay as physically active as you can because that moves the blood through your brain. Music masks unpleasant sounds and gets our system happy and relaxed. So I love this from Rocky Balboa. It's never too early and it's never too late. And think of it as one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time. And that way you can keep moving along in the fight for life. And thank you all so much for listening to me all this time. I'm going to stop my sharing. And
Thank you, Professor Shea. It does look like we had one question in the chat. It says, does this study also apply to Lewy body dementia? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lewy.
now I get these kinds of questions all the time. Sometimes I get the same question for traumatic brain injury or what about after a stroke? First of all, if you're under a physician's care, you talk to the physician before you put anything new in your mouth, including this formulation. We never had a problem, but you don't want to be the first problem. I don't know if it will help Lewy body dementia, but it will help all the neurons in your brain that are still functioning normally. Therefore, excuse me, it is likely to have some positive impact. Does that make sense? So even someone that suffered traumatic brain injury, if we're soothing and assisting those neurons that are still functional, there may be an improvement in cognition. Does that make sense? But always talk to the neurologist or your primary care physician and so on. We only studied Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, and normal brain function. So as a responsible scientist, I can only make serious comments about those conditions, all right? But what a great question. Taking good care of your brain can never be the wrong thing to do for any form of dementia. Okay. Do we have more questions? The presentation is going to be emailed. It'll be in PowerPoint form. If anyone can't open a PowerPoint, we can get it to you in PDF form as well. All the clinical studies are put together in a single PDF. It says clinical studies with Perceptive. That used to be the product name when a company was marketing it. That product doesn't exist, but you can put the components together. Okay.
I don't see any questions, but I actually have a question because sometimes people use Alzheimer's and dementia interchangeably. Is there
Yeah,
like distinct definitions of the two that you should really use?
dementia is fruit. Alzheimer's is a banana, a type of fruit. So just a little while ago, someone asked about Lewy body dementia. That's another form of dementia. We can have vascular dementia where blood flow is diminished, therefore the neurons aren't doing as well as they might. So general dementia is a general category. Alzheimer's is one form of dementia. Great question.
You're also welcome to raise your hand or come off mute if you want to ask a question in person.
Oh, you're welcome, Renee. Thank you so much. Is my email,
I have a question.
let me say, my email is in those clinical studies. So any of you all that come up with a question later, if you want to email me, I'll get you the right information. And the Alzheimer's Association is the best place to go. Yes, please. I'm so sorry for delaying you. You have a question?
No worries. Thank you. So my question was, have you had any personal experience in regards of putting these actions into play in your lifestyle? And have you seen any personal change in regards of your cognitive
Oh, you mean
development?
that formulation? I don't touch that stuff. No, I'm
Oh,
not.
you don't do it.
No, I take it every day and more. I take a handful of pills. It takes me 5 minutes to get them all down because I'm not a good pill swallower. I've been doing karate since I was 20. I'm nowhere near as fast as I used to be, but I keep it going. And I try to stay socially active as I can, at least at work. And I'm always studying music, drums, guitar, piano, bass, playing new music and such. And those things have been a part of my life. So I can't tell you what would it be like if I weren't doing them. But I know I feel better on the days that I have.
That makes sense. So then following up with the nutritional recommendations that you said in the studies that showed proof that it works. Now my concern is, when it comes to vitamins and supplements, technically, isn't it that it's not technically like approved? Like there's no actual certification that whatever's listed in the vitamin is what's in the vitamin. Have you heard of that?
That's a good one. I have heard of that. Now, I can't speak for companies and such that I never worked with, but we were very careful to have the product made and an independent laboratory analyze it to be certain that the stuff was in there, still functional. The term would be bioavailable for us. So we did analyze it to be certain of that. What I recommend that you ask your pharmacist, and if you don't have a personal pharmacist, go talk to one. Even at Walgreens, not to put any place down, the pharmacist in charge has a wealth of information, and we usually don't think of that. We think of an MD or a nurse, and the pharmacist is that person over there. Well, the pharmacist's job is to know what product is for what and what's new and what's going on, and that information eventually gets to an MD who will make a prescription. The nurse is the one who deals with people more so than the MD these days. But pharmacists have a wealth of knowledge, and they will know which is the vitamin you can buy that has been tested, and therefore the stuff in it is good. The one I take is Innate, INNATE, for old people. Doesn't really say for old people on it, but it's elderly male formulation. And that was recommended to me by a pharmacist. We were doing a presentation. I said, tell me the best one. What is it? So it's not the generic one on the shelf that may be a little cheaper, but may not be as readily available and absorbed by us, especially as we age. Yeah, and there we go. So ask the pharmacist which one which one do you know has been validated?
Okay.
And
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was very helpful. I look forward to putting this into effect and see how it goes.
great. I see a portion of a question from,
Yeah, it looks like we have one last question. It says, as we age, are short-term memory issues more prevalent than long-term memory problems?
they both happen. Long-term memories that are formed can be accessed longer, even when we're having trouble consolidating and forming new memories. That was a mouthful and it sounded like Yoda. Let me try an example. My mother, towards the end of her time, was never diagnosed with dementia officially. She was having severe problems with diabetes and just weakening. I'd go to visit her. She'd ask me 300 times, what day is it? What day is it? What day is it? What day is it? If I got her thinking of a song, she used to be a singer. If I got her thinking of a song she used to perform, like Old Man River, she could sing that whole song like she was in front of Simon Cowell on America's Got Talent, right? But she couldn't remember 5 minutes later, what day is it, right? So forming short-term memories becomes a problem. Therefore, they can't become long-term memories. But if you have something in your head that you put down there when you were 10 years old, you can still pull it back for a time. That's why some elderly people will ask how their friend Grace is. Grace is a fictional name I just made up. I don't know anyone named Grace. And Grace has passed away 30 years ago, but they'll ask, how is Grace today, or something like that. So the old memories persist. They can function as if they're new. So that's a mouthful, but there are problems with both short and long term over time. The last night I saw my grandmother, just before she passed away, she looked at me and said, John, and hugged. Well, that was my grandfather's name. And I looked just like him. So she remembered her husband much, much younger, just before the end. She didn't remember that I was Tom in the room and had been talking to her 5 minutes ago, her grandson. Someone else came up with a question. Shakira, I'm not pronouncing it right. Sorry.
It looks like it just says, where is a reliable source for finding the best supplements? I feel like everyone is trying to sell their products.
Oh boy, are they ever. Look at and talk to a pharmacist. Look at the back. There are so many products out now, and it makes me sad. And I can say this without conflict of interest because I don't have a product out. If you go buy those components of the formulation, I don't get a penny. They're not made by me. But we've got Amy Farrah Fowler from The Big Bang Theory talking about Nuriva. Look on the back of some of those products, and there's simply 3 vitamins put together, like vitamin E and vitamin D and folate, which are good for you. But different studies show that they're effective, so let's dump them all in the same bottle and sell it for a whole bunch of money. And it wasn't designed after any particular pathway or central metabolic aspect. So there's a whole bunch of them out there. And you can look for clinical studies. That's why I gave you ours. That's the kind of stuff you want to see before you know something is of value. And again, a lot of them will be simple collections of vitamins. You ask the pharmacist, what are these? And there'll be a compound you don't recognize. Ask the pharmacist.
Okay, Professor Shea, we thank you so much. I was getting some great comments. This is very, very helpful. Everyone, we're going to share the presentation and the information that Professor Shea mentioned, his article, and I believe we can follow up with you, Professor Shea. If we get any more additional questions, we'll be happy to get you that information. And we so appreciate you all coming. This was really great to be able at UMassel. We're so fortunate to have such great experts, such as Professor Shea, that are able to share their wealth of knowledge and their research with our alumni and our community. And so we thank you very much, and we look forward, if you're interested in learning about AI, that will be our next presentation on December 4th.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.